Game over, man. Game over.
Johnny. You're gonna need a bigger potion. Why so serious?
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Welcome to Chasing the Gold for December 4th, 2023, and I'm JD Duran. Joining me for this wonderful episode is our own awards editor, the wonderful, the great Brian Rowe. Brian, welcome back, my friend.
Happy to be here.
All right, and also joining us, you can see her on Women in Session. Great writer, love her. Shadan Larki back as well. Shadan, thanks for being here.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. Greetings from my iPhone.
That's okay. Whatever works. Yeah, so things are ramping up. It's been a minute since the three of us got together on Chasing the Gold, but we've seen a lot of movies since then. There have been some regional groups that have released their nominations, and things are we're getting closer and closer to Oscar nomination morning. So I'm so excited to dive into this. Brian, we're going to start things over with you. I want to, I guess, talk a little broad here up front, and then we can narrow as this conversation goes. But give me your thought process on the awards race as it stands now. Is there a particular category that you want to start off with? Where do you see this shaping up to get the most compelling?
Well, just in broad strokes to kind of start things out, I mean, it is still pretty early as of this recording. We haven't gotten to like Golden Globe, Critics' Choice nominations yet or anything. Yeah. But right now, based on just a few of the critics groups, winners and nominations that have dropped, and there was the Gotham Awards recently, like it looks like this season it's going to come down to Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Poor Things, which hasn't come out yet, but I think Poor Things is going to be a big player as well, especially once more people see it and more of these nominations come out. Like right now, Oppenheimer is looking pretty solid for picture and director. Like it's going to take kind of an upset for, I think, any other movie to defeat it at the Oscars. That's how like high up Oppenheimer is right now. You think of its box office. I mean, it's almost made $1 billion. Everybody loves this movie. Christopher Nolan is overdue. Like it's an awards friendly movie. It's a period drama. Like it's got everything it needs to be a big Oscar player. I think it's going to get tons of nominations. And in terms of like just like the broad outlook of the season, Oppenheimer is going to be the movie to beat.
Okay. All right. Shadan, what do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was redoing my predictions and I had Oppenheimer at number 1. I had Nolan at number 1. I had Murphy at number 1. And I was like, this seems too easy. Like I keep waiting for something else to come on strong to where I could be like, okay, it's not going to be Oppenheimer. But at this point, I just don't think there's been a strong enough contender. So yeah, that's my number 1 for the time being.
Okay. So Oppenheimer is going to destroy, pun intended, I guess. That should be really interesting. I also wanted to ask you, Brian, I guess as we pivot to something a little specific, because you and I were talking a little bit before we started this recording here about Best Actress. Now, of course, I want to get your thoughts on Greta Lee because that's who we were talking about. I know you love that film. So give me some thoughts on Greta Lee. Can she make it in here? And what do you think of that category on the whole? Is there a front runner, you think, at this point?
Best Actress is going to be fun to follow the next few months. Like it's really stacked right now. I said in a recent video, I'm like, there's like 12 to 15 great performances that all are kind of fighting it out to get in right now. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I do think there are 4 locks right now for actress. Emma Stone for Poor Things, Lily Gladstone for Killers of the Flower Moon. It will be Stone versus Gladstone, which I think is really awesome.
Nice.
And then I can't see Carey Mulligan in Maestro or Sandra Hüller in Anatomy of a Fall missing. Those also just look like, I just watched Maestro 2 nights ago. It's great. And Carey Mulligan has a very big showy role in that movie.
Yes.
She ages over many decades, and she's been nominated twice before. And then there's usually like an international pick, someone in an international movie, a beloved film, and Anatomy of a Fall is so great. I mean, that was one of the best movies I saw at Telluride a few months ago.
Sure.
And she's all over that movie. And it's like, if you're going to nominate Anatomy of a Fall for anything, like it would be in Best Actress. So fifth place is where it gets interesting, because there's like, as I said, like at least 7 to 8 other people kind of fighting it out there. My favorite film of the year is Past Lives, and like my prayer is that it gets into picture, original screenplay, and Best Actress for Greta Lee. I hope she takes that fifth place slot. I'm not super confident she will. Like Fantasia Barrino in The Color Purple. Yeah. Not a lot of people have seen that movie yet, but I'm hearing she's really great in that. And then I just saw May December, and Natalie Portman is exceptional in that movie. She slays in that. So there's and those are 2 showy roles. Like Natalie Portman's got that monologue at the end, and then in Color Purple, I haven't seen it yet, obviously, but I mean, if you've seen the 85 film, the stage musical, like Barrino is going to have some big moments in that movie. I'm like, could Greta Lee's kind of reserved performance where her Oscar clip is from across the street, is she going to compete with them? I'm a little nervous. I'm going to, just cross my fingers. If she doesn't make it into very many of the precursors, like Golden Globes, Critics' Choice, and SAG, I mean, at some point I might have to let it go. But right now, she's showing up at tons of events all over the place. And Past Lives, I've seen a bunch of top 10 lists where that movie is number 1. So I feel like there might be enough passion for the movie to get her in. So we'll see. Yeah.
So here's the thing about the Best Actress race that I find so interesting is, if a month ago you would told me that like Margot Robbie isn't really a lock, I would have been shocked. Like the fact that we're looking at such a stacked race that she's kind of an outside contender looking in is just wild to me. Or even something like Nyad with Annette Bening, like that is something that is a traditional Oscar bait that there's just no room for. And in terms of May December, I mean, I know everyone's talking about Charles Melton, and we'll get there, but Natalie Portman for me was the runaway performance of that film. Fair. So again, being in a situation where there's just potentially not enough room for her is really, really interesting. I've had Greta Lee in my 5 this whole time, and I just took her out and put in Fantasia Barrino. I just think that she has like this really interesting narrative of like we've seen like the first timer or something like Yalitza, come in and get that nomination, a similar kind of trajectory to Jennifer Hudson and Dreamgirls too. So I could see there being a lot of love for her, and it's a very splashy performance. If I were picking based on my heart, I would pick Greta Lee. I just don't know if sort of the shiny new toy is going to come in and take that attention. But it's interesting that, Brian, like, you're so confident about Sandra Hüller, because I'm not. I have her in my 5 as just like a hope diction. Like that is my favorite performance of the year as far as Best Actress goes. So, but I'm just not as confident about her sticking through. But I mean, honestly, I could make a greater case for her in supporting.
For Zone of Interest, yeah.
For Zone of Interest, yeah. So it's I think this actress race is just absolutely fascinating.
Shadan, is there a particular reason you're not confident with her in lead?
I just wonder if maybe the buzz will fade, and I know that there's a very strong sort of international contention with the Academy, but I don't know if that's enough to pull her through when you're looking at a film that it's obviously not going to be in the sort of international race. And I haven't seen, I could be wrong, but I feel like she personally hasn't been to as many events, and she's not as front and center. So I don't know. I just don't know if
Yeah,
she has enough
makes
of a
sense.
pull. Also, if you look at Neon, I mean, they have a lot on their slate. So I don't know how much they're prioritizing her. So I'm nervous.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I've been
points,
feeling pretty confident about her since I saw the movie. I just think she gives an incredible performance, and it's
Yeah.
going to be hard for as long as enough people see that movie, it's going to be hard for them to go with someone else.
Yeah. And maybe that's the question. Will enough people see it? I hope the answer to that is yes, because it's one of the best movies of the year
Yes,
as far as
it's
I'm
in my top
concerned. So, yeah, same here. I absolutely love that film. An incredible performance. I do hope that Greta Lee does get in, and maybe that is just hope. But I do want it to get to a point one day. It's not going to be this year, might not be next year, but I want to get to a point where more of these reserved, introspective performances are considered more. And I
Right.
understand the appeal to someone like Emma Stone in Poor Things. She's phenomenal in that role, or even Carey Mulligan in Maestro. But a lot of these performances have scenes where these performers are asked to go obviously much bigger. And it's great. I don't have anything against any of these performances, but I think there's a lot of power, if not more so than being loud, when you're able to convey so much potency by saying very little, if anything at all. And Greta Lee is quintessentially that in past lives. So I hope that one day we can get there. But if she does miss, I think, Brian, you articulated perfectly why that will be the case. And also, here's hoping for Natalie Portman. That film has been divisive, to say the least. But man, I agree with you guys. She is tremendous in that film. Would love to see her get in if possible.
The way that she slowly starts to mimic Julianne Moore is
Yes.
so interesting, and it's so subtle. It's almost like you notice it more like the more you rewatch it too. It's just a subtle transformation. And if I may, I do have to talk about Origin, which is tied for Anatomy of a Fall for my favorite movie of the year. Anjanu Ellis Taylor
Really looking
is
forward to that. Yeah.
phenomenal. Speaking of sort of quiet, I mean, it's not even a quiet performance because she's dealing with so many big emotions, but it's just such a good performance. And unfortunately, when you've been in sort of the Oscar game for so long, you realize that a lot of times it's not about the performance, it's about who is getting the attention and who's getting the eyeballs. And I hope that Origin does get more eyeballs as the season continues. But that's the hard part about doing this, right? It's like it's the performances that we think should get in versus the performances that have the star power and the campaign strategy and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's funny about that is we think about last year, and you follow Golden Globes, Critics' Choice, SAG, and then you have like an Andrea Riseborough situation pop up on Oscar nominations morning. Like there could be a big surprise in actress this year again that none of us is expecting. Like that could happen too. So right now in the season, we're just kind of going with our gut on a lot of these and the performances that we love.
Maybe that's what we have to do for Greta Lee, is just do the grassroots thing.
That's right. We got to get everybody.
Yeah. Get everyone involved.
Yeah, we got to get Kate Winslet interviewing her and saying, "This is the best performance I've ever seen in my life," and then we can get it going. Yeah, it'll be good.
I think we should do that. Keeping with performances, I want to talk about Best Actor here for a moment. Now, you guys might have a different winner, and that's perfectly fine. My question to you, and maybe this is appropriate off the heels of, hey, let's start our own campaign. What do I have to do to get Paul Giamatti an Oscar? Not a nomination, a goddamn Oscar. What do I have to do? Tell me. Brian, tell me. What do I got to do to get my man an award?
You have to have him interview Kate Winslet, and she needs to say this
Just
is
start
the
there again.
Kate
That's fair.
Winslet is the key to unlocking all things Oscars.
I'll just get her on the phone real fast.
Here's the deal with Paul Giamatti, man. He was snubbed for Sideways. That's one of my favorite performances of the 2000s. Like his performance in that movie is insane.
So good, yeah.
And that he was snubbed for that. I just want to get him in for the Holdovers. Forget giving him the win. That's not happening this year. I'm sorry.
Well, that's why I'm asking, what do I got to do? Because I understand that's probably the case.
This race, I cannot imagine anything other than this race comes down to Cillian Murphy and Bradley Cooper the whole way. Like maybe like a Golden Globes, like in comedy or musical, unless they're putting Maestro in comedy or musical, which I guess could be the case because then Cillian Murphy could win in drama. But like I outside of that, I don't see Paul Giamatti winning anything. Although honestly, for me, of those three performances, my favorite is Giamatti. He is just amazing in the Holdovers. So good. Yeah.
I mean, the Holdovers is that typical like Oscar dad movie, right? Like the steak eaters of the Academy are gonna eat that up. So for me, the question is like just how well is the Holdovers gonna do? Like I think Divine Joy Randolph, not to jump ahead, I would say she's in, but it's like, does Dominic Sessa get in as well? Is there an argument for Alexander Payne and director? So like I'm not worried about Giamatti getting his spot. I'm just sort of like, how big is the Holdovers gonna be? My big question mark for actor right now is Jeffrey Wright. Whether or not he claims that fifth spot. I've seen a lot of people predicting Coleman Domingo for Rustin. I know that George C. Wolfe obviously has a history of getting his actors in for Netflix movies. I just don't see it. We also have Andrew Scott for All of Us Strangers that's getting a lot of buzz. So yeah, I have a big question mark around Wright and Scott at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, I've really thought a lot about this race because like I saw Rustin at Telluride. It's a very good film, but I don't feel like that one's really hitting with a lot of people right now.
Yeah.
And my worry is if Rustin is not really being considered in any other category but actor, whereas like American Fiction is looking like it might get into Best Picture, might get into some like screenplay. I feel like Jeffrey Wright will have a better chance of getting in over Coleman Domingo. But Domingo is so great in Rustin that it's like, man, is that not going to get nominated? It feels like a performance that should get in.
It is electric.
So I'm like, how do we get both of those guys in? And I've heard a couple people say DiCaprio is not 100%.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, well, yeah, but he gets in for almost everything lately.
I know.
And it's like, is Killers of the Flower Moon going to be nominated for picture, director, actress, supporting actor, screenplay, and DiCaprio's going to miss? It just, that feels weird to me. So I'm not quite there yet. I still
That's a very strong DiCaprio performance for me, though. Like, even in a career of strong performances, he's fantastic. Which brings me back to Andrew Scott. I mean, he kind of reminds me of Paul Mescal in a little bit of like this actor that a lot of people have a lot of respect for. He's been building up steam for a long time. The Academy has a large sort of British-Irish contingent. Like, is that going to be enough to push him over the edge?
Yeah.
I would love to see Andrew Scott get in. That's also a fantastic performance. I just don't know if All of Us Strangers is going to have enough traction to get him into a very crowded field there. Like I have him in like 7th place right now. Like that would be a wonderful surprise, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's one of my very favorite performances of the year. I don't think it'll get in. I mean, you guys certainly know more than me, but it does seem as if All of Us Strangers, it's an uphill battle for that film. And I will say this, and perhaps just subjectively, because it does seem as if this is at least cinephile heresy. But I would not lose sleep at all. And again, I love the man as an actor anyway. I certainly love his artistry. But if DiCaprio missed for Jeffrey Wright, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Jeffrey Wright is it's a little bit of that Paul Giamatti thing where he's been due for so long now, and I love him in that role. I love that performance. I love what that film is all about in a lot of ways, and I think that's a worthy performance. But again, I mean, there are times where it's a little showy, but the showmanship of it is meant to be sarcastic, which I think is very much the charm of that movie and that performance. A lot of the family drama stuff, it's more Greta Lee than it is, the opposite of that. So, like, I think he finds an incredible middle ground where it is quiet, it's reserved in many respects, but it has a broad appeal to it simultaneously. I just think he rides that line impeccably. And look, I love DiCaprio. You're right, Shadan. It's a great performance, maybe even one of his best in the last 10 years or so. But man, I think Wright deserves to be in. And I would put him in over DiCaprio personally. I don't think that'll happen, but one can hope, I guess.
Well, they could both get in, and then Coleman Domingo misses. That's what would happen. Domingo
misses, which would be sad in its own
Or
right.
could you imagine if Giamatti missed again? Could you imagine?
Oh my God. No.
Like, this guy
we will riot in the streets. Yes.
Like, he only has the one nomination for Cinderella Man. Like, we need Giamatti to get in again. Come on.
I agree. I agree. All right. Well, let's talk about the supporting performances. I know, Shadan, you really wanted to get into these. Did you want to start with actor or actress? Do you have a preference here?
I'm fascinated by both of them. Let's start with actor because, and this isn't a controversial opinion, I guess, I don't see the Robert Downey Jr. thing. Like, I have him as my number one just because it feels like such a legacy. You save cinema playing the big character. You're a previous nominee. Like, let's pat you on the back for everything you've been through and give you a win. Like, I absolutely see that narrative. But in terms of the performance, there's just nothing special about it to me. I can name 4 other supporting performances from Oppenheimer that I was more impressed with. But then you have, Ruffalo in Poor Things. You have Dafoe in Poor Things. Gosling, which seems like a lock to me. And then you have like De Niro for Killers of the Flower Moon, which I had this whole time. And I just kicked him out for Charles Melton, which seems like he is gaining a lot of steam very quickly. And then you have, somebody like, if American Fiction does really well, you could make a case for somebody like Sterling K. Brown getting in. And then you have Dominic Sessa from The Holdovers, which on a very good day, I could see him getting in. The Academy does love first-time performers. So I'm just so curious what you guys make of this category, because I could see it going a number of ways. And I should mention also Coleman Domingo has a good chance getting in here for The Color Purple. So if he misses in lead, we could sort of see a makeup nomination here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, supporting actor for me for weeks now, I have felt like we had 4 locks. We had Downey Jr., Gosling, Ruffalo, and De Niro. That's another one. I know he missed for The Irishman in Best Actor, and people have said that. Like, well, maybe he could miss for Killers of the Flower Moon, but like, I thought he was spectacular in that movie. I thought it's the best he's been in like maybe decades. And I feel like Killers of the Flower Moon is going to do very well in many categories. And so that would be odd to me if De Niro missed. Especially because I feel like 5th place goes to Charles Melton or Dominic Sessa or Willem Dafoe. I wouldn't say Dafoe is a lock because Mark Ruffalo has a much showier role in many ways, I think, in that movie. Even though Dafoe has the physical transformation, there is like a middle hour of the movie that Dafoe's barely in. So I feel like Ruffalo has a better shot of making it than Dafoe. So I think 5th place comes down to Melton or Dafoe. That's where I am right now. I currently have Melton in now that I've seen May December, and he's fantastic.
Yeah, I do think he lives up to the hype in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
I will say when it comes to this category, and I guess I have a history of this, so you might just have to forgive me and bear with me on it, because I am, when it comes to awards anyway, I think there are times I find myself up against the grain because I don't look at this the same way as a lot of other people do. I certainly don't follow it in the same ways that you guys do, which is why I have you here to support this conversation and to carry it, because it's not my forte like it is for you guys. But I think of something like, we talked about DiCaprio a minute ago, and people don't love the win that he had for The Revenant. I champion that performance. And I think part of the frustration for me is that the discourse talks about the campaigning. And to be fair, the campaigning of something like DiCaprio on The Revenant, I think, focused on the wrong things. They talked about what DiCaprio had to go through in terms of the filmmaking process. And so that's what people talked about. And that was not the heart and soul of that performance. In fact, what made that performance great had nothing to do with what he ate or the conditions in which he had to endure. All the physicality of it is maybe notable, but the heart and soul of that performance came down to, again, as I noted earlier, it's kind of the internalization that he's doing. I mean, DiCaprio hardly says a word in that movie. And I think he's able to convey so much suffering with his, internalized performance. And the fact that it won, I think, kind of blew me away. So it's so antithetical to something like The Wolf of Wall Street, a performance that I don't love as much as others because it's so overly redundant. So so that year I championed DiCaprio. I thought it was worthy. And again, not because of what the discourse was. And I say that to say, when it comes to Robert Downey Jr., I think I'm finding myself in a very, very similar camp because people are drawn to so many other performances in that film. And it's a great ensemble cast. And so people start, I think, peeling apart that performance in a way that, to me, I think maybe undermines what is really good there. Because especially when the film came out, it was RDJ versus Alden Ehrenreich. And there was a lot of conversation back and forth on that. I think what Robert Downey Jr. is doing there is great. It's a much more complicated performance than what Alden Ehrenreich is doing. And Ehrenreich is very good, but it's such a crowd-pleasing role that does not work without the complexities that RDJ gives it. And some of it is Nolan's storytelling because he's setting up the character this way and then subverting him to pull the rug out from under us in the third act of the film. And I think RDJ is able to ride that line impeccably. So early on, that ambiguity is thriving. And then by the end of the film, when that is unpacked, we start to see him in a different light. And I think those complexities come through extremely well in his performance. So this is one of those situations where I hope he doesn't win because people will put a target on it, perhaps unfairly, arguably anyway. I just hope he gets nominated so that way the discourse can, I guess, kind of stifle itself once he loses. But I think it's, at the very least, it's genuinely worthy of a nomination. Maybe not a win. I'm here defending it. I still wouldn't vote for him. I would still vote for a Robert De Niro, for example, or maybe even a Charles Melton. I love those performances, but I do think Downey Jr. is genuinely worthy of a nomination. And so I at least wanted to step in here and defend it because I know I might be in a minority there.
I would agree with that. I mean, when I saw the movie, because I remember I made a video like, what do I think the nominations might be for Oppenheimer before I saw it. And then when we get to that scene later in the movie where Downey Jr. just goes off in that back room, I went, oh shit. he is coming for that nomination. I think he's one of the most memorable characters and performances in that film. I mean, I still have only seen it the one time, and his scenes really do stick out in my mind when I think back on that movie. So
yeah,
I still have him in number one. I think he will probably win.
Yeah.
That's what I think right now. I mean, Ryan Gosling would be awesome.
Against it. Yeah.
Ryan Gosling for Barbie is I just feel like because of the comedic nature of the role, I wonder about his chances to win very much this season. And then, I mean, my pick actually would be Mark Ruffalo in Poor Things. He is such a
He's
hoot.
so good.
He's
Yeah.
so funny. It's such
Hilarious.
an original performance. He has 3 supporting actor nominations behind him without a win. It's funny. Like most of the guys in this category, like, or 3 of them at least, would be previous nominees who haven't won yet: Downey Jr., Gosling, and Ruffalo.
Yeah.
So there will be kind of like an overdue factor for all 3 of them.
Sure.
I worry about Ruffalo because of like some of the sexual nature of the performance, and
Fair.
the fact that Defoe will also be in the conversation. And sometimes when you have 2 people kind of battling it out, it's hard to win stuff. Although
Sure.
that didn't hurt Jamie Lee Curtis last year or a few months ago.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like I think Melton, I mean, even though he's won a couple things already, I do think Melton, just like the nomination would be the win for him. I can't see him with the Academy for May, December, like winning for that would be very
that makes sense.
surprising to me. So De Niro would have a shot, but he has won 2 before. So there's no like, we got to give him a third. Like, I mean, I guess there could be that.
Yeah.
Kind of like how Meryl Streep won for The Iron Lady many decades later. But
it
I
would be
feel like
deserving though. If he does win, I think it's I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
If there's a lot of voters that think like me anyway, I'm looking at the list here and going, that is the best, or at least arguably the best supporting performance of the year that I've seen so far.
Oh yeah.
So I wouldn't blame anyone voting for it as much as I love RDJ.
It's going to be interesting because Lily Gladstone has already won some things for Killers of the Flower Moon. There might be that thinking, like, we're in acting, we're going to give the prize to Gladstone, and supporting actor will give it to someone
go
else.
somewhere else. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Like in Best Actor, like, can Cillian Murphy win? I now, having just watched Maestro a couple nights ago, I mean, that is a much bigger, showier performance in every way. And Bradley Cooper has 9 nominations behind him without a win. So Cillian Murphy's never been nominated. Yeah. So I always think about that. It doesn't always work out that way, but like, I do think a lot of Academy members think about that. Like, oh, this guy's been nominated for 1,000 things and has never won. That often helps if they're neck and neck. So
Bradley Cooper's just the Roger Deakins of acting.
So in the acting categories, for me, the most likely acting win for Oppenheimer would be supporting actor Downey Jr.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I see that. Have either of you seen The Color Purple and Coleman Domingo yet? I haven't seen it yet.
Nope, haven't seen it, but I'm excited to take my mom on Christmas Day.
Okay.
Unless I get a screener before.
Yeah, and I just, again, I haven't seen it, so I don't know, but I just, if he's not going to get in for Rustin, I guess my question would be, is he worthy here if Melton misses, for example?
I don't like when they do that. That would be annoying to me if like they slip him into supporting actor because he couldn't quite make it into actor for a different movie. Like, my question is whose spot would he take? I guess he would take Melton's spots. Supporting actor.
Yeah.
Like, supporting actress is very open right now. I would say there's only 3 people that look pretty likely, whereas slots 4 and 5 are wide open. That's not the case in supporting actor. I feel like there's really just room for one surprise there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, Coleman Domingo, he's so great in Rustin that I feel like are we going to give him a supporting actor nomination for Color Purple instead, just to kind of recognize his work for the year? I mean, they've done that before.
Sure.
So it's definitely in the realm of possibility, but
okay,
it's just really stacked supporting actors.
It is.
It's gonna be hard
really,
to get in there.
It really is. No, I agree. Well, what do you think about supporting actress? Where do you see that falling?
Supporting actress right now, again, just said I haven't seen Color Purple, but like since they announced this movie, I'm a huge fan of Orange is the New Black, and I've seen the stage musical, and the role of Sophia is just dynamite. Oprah Winfrey did a great job in the 85 film by Steven Spielberg.
Yes.
And I'm just like, Danielle Brooks as Sophia in the new Color Purple, that looks like on paper, like that would be the front runner. And then they started holding the screenings like 2 weeks ago or something. And then everything I saw online was Danielle Brooks runs away with the movie. And I was like, well,
Okay.
That's called predictable, I guess.
Yeah.
So I definitely have her at the top with Divine Joy Randolph in The Holdovers. I adored her performance in that movie. That scene in the kitchen,
so good.
where she just she's trying to like act all bubbly. It's the holidays, and she just has that breakdown scene in the kitchen. I went, okay.
Yeah.
I said, tell you right. I said, this race is over. She's winning. So she's definitely getting in. She's winning. She's already won a couple things.
Yeah. I saw that she's won a couple of at least regional.
And then I feel like Emily Blunt will make it in for Oppenheimer, even though I thought that part of the movie was the weak link. Like I felt like she didn't get a whole lot to do throughout those 3 hours. She gets that one really great moment at the end in the interrogation room. I was like, Emily Blunt just needs one memorable scene in this movie. And then there it was towards the end. I just think enough people know how great she is and that she's never been nominated. She's one of our great actors, especially of like kind of her age range, like who has never been nominated. And there's at least 3 performances she's given that I feel like should have made it in. So I just feel like riding the coattails of a very awards friendly movie and Oppenheimer getting a bunch of nominations, I feel like Emily Blunt will make it.
Okay.
Unless she gets into every precursor and then they surprise an Oscar nominations morning with with the only other woman in the movie, Florence Pugh. But I don't think they would do that.
Yeah, I don't think they will.
Emily Blunt at that point, I think, would just like start just going down the list of Academy members and calling and screaming. I don't know. But the thing with supporting actress is kind of like an actress. There's probably outside of those 3, there's like at least 6, 7 other women kind of fighting it out for slots 4 and 5. And I have Penelope Cruz and Ferrari, which I have not watched yet. I'm going to watch it in the next few days. But I've heard she's one of the best parts of it. And it's a very showy role, I've read. And they love Penelope Cruz. She's been nominated a lot. And she got that surprise nomination, last year for the film she did with Almodovar, Parallel Mothers. And so I feel like she could make it in. And then I have kind of a wild card for 5th place in America Ferrera and Barbie. Everyone's saying I'm nuts. Everyone's saying like that's crazy. But I think if Ryan Gosling can make it in, Ferrera has that one glorious monologue scene. It's one of the best scenes in the movie. And I feel like if Barbie can get into like picture, maybe director, screenplay, supporting actor, with supporting actress as wide open as it is right now, I feel like that could happen. I've seen her at some events already. She's been at some Barbie screenings and like press events and things. And the question is like Jodie Foster and or Julianne Moore. It kind of feels like one of them might get in because they're so beloved in the Academy, like over someone like America Ferrera. But that's where I am right now in supporting actor.
So I have a question, and sorry if you guys went over this because the tech ghosts have come for me during this podcast. But in terms of the color purple, do you guys have Danielle Brooks and Taraji P. Henson getting in, or is it just one of the 2?
I just have Danielle Brooks, but Taraji P. Henson, absolutely. If that movie really overperforms, it does well at the box office, it gets in a bunch at like Golden Globes and SAG and stuff, gets into an ensemble, I could see Taraji P. Henson also making it. Both actresses who played those characters in the 85 film, Margaret Avery and Oprah Winfrey, they both got in 86. So I could see a repeat of that happening if everybody really loves her.
And she's a previous nominee who has a lot of like, she's worked with everyone. Like I could see a huge push for her. There is just a lot of, I mean, I think Divine Joy Randolph, like she's my number 1. I would say she's a lock, but there's just so many wild cards. Like I could see the Barbie, but then it's like, are we really going to live in a world where Margot Robbie doesn't get in and then America Ferrera gets in? Like
that would be wild.
I don't know. And then you have, again, Sandra Hüller, like, is she gonna get in for Zone of Interest? One of my favorite performances of the year is Rachel McAdams in Are You There, God? It's Me,
Yes.
Margaret. I've given up on that actually happening, but if we were talking about the best performances of the year, she should be there. And then in terms of Penelope Cruz, like, she is the best thing about a very mid movie to me. So if people were name checking, I could see a scenario where she gets in, but there are better performances. And then Jodie Foster, I mean, I've seen a lot of people ranking her pretty high. Again, it would be a weird situation to not have, Nyad actually get in, but then to have Jodie Foster get in. This is just a fascinating category to me because I could see a lot of surprises.
Yeah.
And
That's
Rosamund
interesting.
Pike and Saltburn, I loved.
Yeah, that's
so
one of my
again,
faves.
there's like 10 to 12 great performances fighting it out for those 5 slots. It will be disappointing if there is just like that name checking thing happening and it's like the really great work doesn't get recognized. Would be disappointing.
Oh, and forgive me if one of you mentioned this. I might have accidentally overlooked it. I apologize if that is the case. But what about Rachel McAdams? Is there any hope there for Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret?
I mean, I want her to be there. She would be my number one if I was voting.
If you were
but
voting?
I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, she deserves to be in there. I remember I watched that. It had been out for a couple months and I'd heard good things, but like she just absolutely like blew me away in that movie.
Yeah,
she's
so
great.
good. Yeah.
And I feel like if the film had come out later in the year, it was an April release. It was kind of a quiet late April release.
Yes.
And it came and went. And I don't see the movie getting in anywhere else. And that's always tough. Like when you just are like hoping for that one nomination for that early year release movie.
Makes sense.
Because she's been nominated before for Spotlight, like she has the previous nomination. That always helps, I think, when you have one nomination or more before.
Sure.
I hope she gets into at least one of the precursors, like one really cool Rachel McAdams nomination. If she can get in at like Golden Globes or SAG, I would say she might have an outside shot. Because that is one of the best performances of the year. Rachel McAdams is fantastic in that.
Okay. Well, that would be fun to see because I'm with you. That to me is one of my favorite supporting performances of the year as well. I want to jump to director. You guys want to talk about director?
Yeah, we haven't really. I mentioned briefly at the beginning about director, but we haven't talked about it. Yeah.
I know. So I'm curious where you guys line up on here. Obviously, it seems to be Nolan, Scorsese maybe leading the way here. But as far as nominations, maybe even a surprise win. Maybe that's a myopic statement on my end. I don't know. Where do you guys see this going?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a win, like I can't see Nolan not winning this. Like it just seems like whatever happens in picture, like I mean, we'll see how it does over the next few weeks. Poor Things. Like I do see a reality where Poor Things could upset Oppenheimer and win Best Picture. But Nolan, he's been nominated for a few things here and there. He's never won. This seems like the moment to give Nolan an Oscar.
Yes.
It's like the right movie at the right time. Did well at the box office. Everybody loves it. And I don't know who else could win. Like Scorsese has the one win for The Departed, so he has one.
This would be more deserving.
This would be more deserving.
I'm just saying.
I mean, that would just feel weird to me. Like for Oppenheimer to do really well, and then they give it to Scorsese over Nolan.
It does feel weird. I agree.
I don't see it.
If it feels like if Oppenheimer didn't exist, then I think I would be championing Scorsese. I think this would be a much better win for him. But Oppenheimer does exist. And you're right. It's hard to deny Nolan here.
If Scorsese had not won for The Departed, if he, after 50 years, still hadn't won, then I think Scorsese gets it.
That's fair.
Which is such a, I mean, it's such a stupid part of this whole thing. It's like, oh, because he has won, then he's in second or third. It's like, it's kind of dumb.
No.
But I would actually put Scorsese in third place. I think the closest competition in a way to Nolan is Yorgos Lanthimos, because he directs the hell out of Poor Things. Like,
he does.
That is not
I mean,
whether you like it or love it or hate it, or like that is a very specific vision of a director, a movie nobody else could have made in that way.
It's
and I just
so
think
strange and weird though. Like we
really
were talking
amazing.
about this because we reviewed this on the show last week, and Lanthimos it's astonishing to me because you think about some of his earlier work, like when Dogtooth came out, you watch that and you're like, man, this is awesome. And this is not a director that the Academy will never touch. They will never touch this guy.
Yeah.
And here we are a decade later, and he's going to get nominated. This film will get nominations, and it's arguably his weirdest movie. And yet here we are. It's in the hunt big time. And I just 10 years ago, that Academy I don't think would have touched this film, but it clearly so much has changed since 2016. And I do find that fascinating.
I think Everything Everywhere All at Once doing as well as it did a few months ago. I mean, that opens up the weirdness factor too. Like where The Shape of Water is another one. Beat out a lot of The Shape of Water beat out Dunkirk, which at the time I was like, oh, Dunkirk feels like an Academy favorite movie, and then it didn't do very well really. Whereas they gave their love to The Shape of Water, which was kind of a strange movie if you remember. Yeah. So I do think Poor Things is going to do well, and Lanthimos, I mean, in some ways, it's like if I were to give that movie a couple of prizes, Lanthimos would be right up there because it's like his vision. It's so peculiar and weird and amazing.
Shadan, any thoughts?
Just quickly, because my audio was being ridiculous. If Rachel McAdams does get a Best Supporting Actress nomination, I will never say anything bad about the Academy again. If we see anything for Origin, I will keep my mouth shut and I will excuse any ridiculous. And same thing with Anatomy of a Fall. Like those three movies, if they show up anywhere, like the Academy will have my allegiance for the rest of my life. Which brings me to Justine Tiet. I mean, could she get in? I don't know. I don't know what to make of this category, guys. And then also a huge question mark that I have in general across all categories, and it's a good time to talk about it, is the zone of interest. Because Jonathan Glazer seems like somebody that the directorial branch would embrace, but I feel like that movie has sort of maybe faded a little bit. And then again, we come back to is Sandra Hüller possibly going to show up in supporting? So that's just such a huge question mark for me. And then could Cord Jefferson surprise for having such a vision with American Fiction? I mean, for me, the five that I have right now are Nolan, Scorsese, Gerwig, Lanthimos, and I have Alexander Payne. So that's five, right? Yeah.
I have never had Gerwig in. I am not very confident that they're going to nominate Gerwig. I would love for that to happen. I think it's a worthy nomination. They've nominated her before for Lady Bird, but I don't know. I'm just I'm not feeling confident that the directors usually pick a couple oddball, not oddball, but international, or are they going to embrace Gerwig for Barbie? I could see it getting into picture with 10 slots. I don't know if they're going to be that cool.
I mean, I would hope so. I think she directs the hell out of that movie.
Yeah.
I mean, the production design, the costuming, I mean, everything about it is spectacular. I do think that's a worthy nomination. Jonathan Glazer is another interesting one to me. I think that falls in line with what we were just talking about, Brian, with Yorgos Lanthimos, because his films are also singular. They're quite Birth might be a little bit, I guess, it has a broader appeal than something like Under the Skin for sure, but that is also a strange concept that is going to be polarizing. and Under the Skin you just can't recommend to anybody. Like I love it, but you can't.
One of my favorites.
It's so good. Yeah, I absolutely adore it. And The Zone of Interest, which I haven't seen, I'm hopefully going to catch up with that later this week. But that's also like this really interesting premise that doesn't seem like it has a broad appeal to it. So like for the Academy to embrace him, I think it is absolutely indicative of those same changes. And again, I haven't seen the film yet, so I can't speak to it. But I do hope that Barbie gets in over one of them, or maybe even like I love Alexander Payne, or even Bradley Cooper with Maestro. This is perhaps hot takey, but if I had to pick, I actually kind of prefer Cooper the director than Cooper the actor. I would probably prefer him getting in there versus actor, but I don't want Gerwig to miss though.
Could you imagine that?
I know. Like however it shapes out, take one of the fellas out and just at least throw in Gerwig.
What would that say to Bradley Cooper that they nominate him in director, but they pass him over in actor? Like,
I don't
we
know.
loved your directing so much that we didn't really like that lead performance you did, though.
Like I don't see a world where that is going to happen. But I'm just saying, like that's probably how I would vote personally.
Yeah, a lot of people don't have Alexander Payne, and I feel like he's probably getting in. I mean, he's been nominated for director 3 times before for very kind of quiet movies. They weren't like Sideways and Descendants and Nebraska. They're not like these big movies, and I feel like The Holdovers is one of his best he's ever done, and so that would be strange to me for them to ignore him here. Like I just feel like they like him enough. I feel like The Holdovers is going to do really well.
Yeah,
and I also have in my 5th place Glazer, just because I did see The Zone of Interest at Telluride, and it's very much a director's movie. It's very strange, and the way he puts it together, I mean, it's got such a confidence to it. And I always go back to that, like the directors usually almost every year will give you kind of an different nomination, like the Cold War nomination from was that 2018, 2019, and it's I think even if The Zone of Interest doesn't get into picture, I still think Glazer could get in for director.
Right. Okay. Well, the director's branch has become increasingly international. There's usually always an international person in there. That's why I'm also, again, kind of going back to Justine Theet for Anatomy of a Fall. Like, I wonder if she could be the one.
That'd be interesting. Yeah.
To me, it makes more sense that she would get in for Anatomy of a Fall, like over Gerwig for Barbie. Like in some ways, I feel like Justine would make it. That they would really appreciate her work in that.
That would be a fun surprise. I love that film. So yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll, call it there. Maybe the next time we get together, we can talk about some of these, below the line categories, because I do want to talk about them. The final thoughts on any of the categories we talked about. We can include Best Picture in that as well if you want to, but any final thoughts from you guys as we wind down for this episode?
I guess if I could throw a question at you guys, I wonder what is the biggest sort of mystery that remains for you?
That's a good question. The biggest mystery. Every category is a mystery in some way. I have my thoughts about who could potentially win in each category, but there's not one category that I'm like, oh, I know this. I know exactly who the 5 are going to be. It's still early enough where it's kind of, up for grabs. What my biggest question mark is? My biggest mystery on Oscar nominations morning. If Barbie gets in the screenplay, is it going to show up in original or adapted?
Yeah, that's honestly a really good question.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Because I think they're promoting it as original. They want it to go into original. Adapted is stacked. You have Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Poor Things, American Fiction, The Zone of Interest. Original is more up for grabs, so it makes sense that Barbie would get in there. But I don't know. They're pretty strict about their screenplay rules. Like Whiplash they designated as adapted because before he made the feature, Damien Chazelle, he made like he shot one of the scenes from the script and it premiered as a short film at Sundance. And it was really just a way to get funding for the feature. It wasn't like a separate thing. And all that season, every award show, it was an original, but then the Academy designated it adapted. And I'm like, if they're going to do that to Whiplash, are they going to designate Barbie an original screenplay when it's based on existing IP? That just would be weird to me. So I don't know. I like, it's been hard to predict the screenplay categories because I'm not 100% that Barbie will show up in original. So
mine would be the international features. I don't know what 5 are going to make it. I don't know if Anatomy of a Fall has enough strength to show up in major categories without that support. I don't know what to do about the Zone of Interest. I think it's a bit more polarizing than people may realize. Like, I see a lot of people predicting it in all sorts of places, so I'm interested to see how those categories play out.
Yeah, some really, really good international films this year, so that should be a fun one. I don't know if this is a mystery, but the one that I am hoping for the most, or perhaps I think one that I don't know how much it is on the radar, so maybe it's a mystery in that regard. But the one that I think when we're talking about legacy and an artist that should have been nominated several times over and hasn't is Joe Hisaishi and his music for The Boy and the Heron. I think it's time that we recognize him because that score is phenomenal. His work with Hayao Miyazaki is well established and well known. And it's due. That's going to be the last time those two work together. So it's the last opportunity to nominate his work from anything Miyazaki, and it's deserving. It's as good as anything I've heard this year when it comes to original score. So that's the one for me. Will it get in? Probably not. It's me pleading my case to an empty room, most likely. But that's the one for me. At any rate. That'll do it for this episode. As we wind down, Brian, thank you so much again for being here. Tell us where we can find your work and where can we find you on social media?
The best 2 places to find me are on Twitter or X or whatever you call it. Mr. Brian Rowe, Mr. Brian Rowe. I usually tweet out some things there every day. And then I run the YouTube channel, The Awards Contender. I have like between 2 and 3 videos every week. I do prediction videos, retrospective videos. I just put out like a near 40-minute long video all about the Best Actress race from a decade ago that came down to Jennifer Lawrence in Silver Linings Playbook versus Jessica Chastain in Zero Dark 30 and Emmanuel Riva in Amour. Spent like 2 weeks working on it, and it's a really fun video.
Yeah.
If you like those kind of retrospectives on races from years past, I make a lot of those too. So that's on YouTube at The Awards Contender.
All right. Yeah, definitely go and give Brian a follow. Fantastic follow. His work on YouTube is also really spectacular. So please go and subscribe to his channel. Shadan, where can we find you and on social media?
Yes. First of all, thanks for putting up with me and my tech issues,
course,
even though
no
I
problem.
bought a very fancy mic and I was so excited to try out my mic. Next time, if you invite me back next time, I will get my SHIT together. But you can find me on socials at Shadan Larki, and I divide my time between in session and awards daily. So lots of awards coverage coming up.
Absolutely. Please give Shadan a follow. Really great. You can also hear her on our Women in Session podcast.
Yes.
So please subscribe to the podcast. You can hear that weekly. We have a bunch of podcast reviews. It's that time of year, so we have a bunch that are coming out. We had 3 out last week. We got 3 new ones out this week. So be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, however you listen to the show. I greatly do appreciate it. And we'd love to hear your feedback. If you agree or disagree with anything we had to say here, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the social medias. Just search In Session Film. And I think with that, that'll do it. And the next time we'll get together, we'll talk about some tech categories maybe, and more original score because that's my favorite. So we'll get to that. At any rate, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast.